I'm going to show you in this video how to get started using R starting from square one. So I'm beginning on the 1201.info website where there's a lot of various course information, including how to install, get started with R, and then a lot of information about how to do what we're doing in class using R. A reminder that this is all completely optional. You can start out, see if you like it, decide if you want to continue using it. If you do use R, you can use it for your problem sets, but everything can be done without it as well. So there's a lot of possibilities. So we're going to go to the introduction section of 1201.info, and you will see here that the second section is installing R. And what's important to note here is that you have to install two different things. There's the actual programming language called R, and that has this logo. That's what we call like the engine, the part that does all of the work. And then we're also going to install RStudio, and RStudio is aptly named. You can think of it like an artist studio where it provides you with lots of tools for doing the work that you want to do. So there are plenty of people who use other IDEs. That's what RStudio is, an integrated development environment. There are people who don't use any at all, but this is what I recommend. It gets a little confusing because the logos are kind of similar, but once you install both of them, you're going to use the second one, RStudio, and that you'll never really have to deal with the first one. But RStudio is not going to work unless they're both installed. Okay, so let's just take a quick look at how to install R. We're going to go to this link, the cran.rproject.org. And you're going to see that you have options for downloading and installing R for different operating systems. So you're going to click on that, download it. I've already done that, so I'm not going to repeat that process. Okay. And then for the other one, you're going to go to RStudio. And again, see, they're reminding you that you need to install R first, that you're not going to be able to do this without, RStudio won't work without that engine. And then you can find the appropriate link for the operating system that you have. So there's Windows, whatever it is that you're using. Okay, and you will install that. So now I'm going to just show you what it looks like when you open those two apps, and I'm going to intentionally open the one that you're not going to use just so you know what it is. Like I said, you don't have to have this environment, so I mean, this looks really old school. It's not a graphical user interface. It's what computers were like when I first started using them, where you just have to type everything line by line. And you can think of this as kind of a glorified calculator. You can do calculations. They will appear, I don't know what that was, some kind of, I never use it this way, so it looks a little strange to me, but you can do different things here and get answers. But that's the last you're going to be seeing this from me. And instead, we're going to open up RStudio. And now you're going to see that it looks very different. Don't be intimidated by the number of menus and the number of options. We're only going to use a very small part of it to start with. And then as you learn, you can start using additional things. So if we go back to 1201 info, the first thing that I suggest you do is to read and try the examples in Chapter 1 of Introduction to R. And let's see where would be a good place to start, really right from the beginning. Okay, we're going to go to what's called the console pane. That is the lower left pane, this one where it says console. Okay. And that really is what we saw before if you were just using R without all of the rest of the stuff. That's what I referred to as the glorified calculator. And that's the kind of thing that we're going to start out with. You can start doing addition problems, multiplication, subtraction, division, powers. You can use parentheses. And then you can also test if things are true. So there are what we call logical results, where it'll tell you that it's either true or not true. So what this means, the double equal sign is a question mark. Is it equal to 4? And it's either true or false. Okay? You can go through here and try out variables, and I'm going to give my own examples as well, and then learn how to save code in an R script. We'll look at vectors. Okay, and this is a great introduction, but again, we're going to do this ourselves. I know I'm just speeding through this to give you an overview. So we're back in RStudio. We're going to move to the console area in the lower left. Okay. And I can start doing operations. 3 plus 4, 3 times 4, 3 divided by 4, 3 minus 4, okay? 3 raised to the 4th power. I can combine things. Okay. Now, variables. We can store things in variables. You can store them in one of two ways. The kind of classic way to do this in R is what's called the assignment operator. It's a less than sign and then a dash. So that means store the number 3 in a variable called a. R is very loose with variable names, so you can do all kinds of weird stuff with variable names, but I would suggest trying to keep it simple. Use letters. You could use words if you want. And notice that this popped up here. This is showing you what variables you have. You can think of the variables as like memory in a calculator where you're saving things. And then you can use a anytime that you would have used 3 before, right? And now we can use that variable name instead of a number to do our calculations. Next, the second way to store something, you can use the equal sign instead of the assignment operator, and it will work the same. People have different styles. Some purists like the assignment operator because it really isn't accurate to say that a equals 4. What you're trying to say is store the number 4 in a. So that's where that tradition comes from. But either one will work. Either one is fine. I can say b equals 7. I can do a divided by b, right? And all works as expected. Now let's talk about vectors. A vector is sometimes called an array. It's just a series of numbers. We create vectors in R with C, which stands for concatenate, and you can just put a bunch of numbers together. Okay. And now I have that vector with my numbers. There's some pretty cool things that you can do in R that are harder to do in other languages. It understands if you do something like x plus 1 to add a 1 to every single element of your vector. So we now have everything increased by 1. Okay.